Ever had a Karen measure your grass while the paper slam from your mailbox is still echoing? I opened my driveway permit only for the HOA to block it, revoking a city-approved tree and threatening liens over uniformity standards, and she paused in those big sunglasses like it was law. Then the red tape glow shifted. Ron stamped the dissolution record with a sharp paper click, and that certified permit became my proof token. Next week, the clubhouse door stayed shut. Receivership posted HOA. Silent, that tree finally standing in sunlight. The mail slot clicked and the sound carried clear down the hallway. Mary called from the living room. "Anything good?" "Doubt it," I said, wiping my hands on an old shop rag as I walked to the door. 2 envelopes lay on the rug. One was cream-colored with a faint green city seal. The other was bright white with a blue HOA logo in the corner. I picked them up and felt my stomach push a little knot into place. One envelope usually meant permission. The other usually meant a problem. Mary stepped into the hallway with her mug. "What have you got?" "Garden permit," I said, lifting the cream envelope. "For the tree." I tore it open carefully and slid out a single sheet. The paper was stiff official. I read the heading aloud. City of Copper Ridge, Planning Department, Residential Garden Permit, 1 decorative tree. Mary's shoulders softened. So, they approved it. Looks that way. I ran a finger down the lines. Status, approved. Effective immediately. Location, front yard, northeast corner. The raised city seal caught a line of light from the sidelight window. Somebody at City Hall had pressed it there just for me. For a second, it felt like the town itself had said, "Go ahead." "Plant your tree," Good Mary said. "You've worn a trench pacing that bare patch." I smiled. "That patch is going to be shade before I'm 60. Then I looked at the white envelope. The HOA logo sat in the corner like a smirk. Copper Ridge Estates. Homeowners Association. Neat serif letters, pretending they were a courthouse. Mary saw my face change. "Let me guess." "Yeah," I said. "Fan mail." I ripped it open less carefully. 1 page, big, bold heading. Preliminary review notice. I read, "Subject unauthorized tree planting." Mary blinked. "Authorized." "You just got the permit." "I know." I kept reading. "All landscape alterations must comply with Section 7, Landscape Uniformity Standards. Your recent application to the city does not constitute HOA approval." I let the paper fall a little in my hand. "They're upset I went to the city before I kissed the ring. So what does that actually mean?" she asked. "It means they're about to turn 1 tree into a federal case," I said. Out of the front window, something small and blue rolled into view. The HOA golf cart hummed down the street, plastic roof rattling over every seam in the asphalt. "Speak of the devil," Mary murmured. The cart eased to a stop in front of our house, then turned into our driveway like it had every right to be there. Cynthia Hale climbed out, clipboard hugged against her blazer like a shield. Tan jacket in warm weather, big sunglasses, silver hair cut sharp along her jawline. Everything about her said she'd already decided who was right. I opened the front door before she could knock. "Morning, Cynthia," I said. "Good morning, Mr. Cooper," she replied, voice dry as a legal memo. Her eyes flicked to the papers in my hand. "I see you've received our notice. Got 2, actually." I held up the cream sheet. "City says my garden permit for 1 tree is approved." She didn't look at the seal. "The association has serious concerns," she said. "We can't allow residents to make unilateral changes. That defeats the purpose of community standards." "It's 1 tree," I said. "Back corner of the yard. The city's fine with it. The city doesn't protect our property values," she said. "We do." Section 7 of the covenants clearly states that all landscaping must be approved by the Architectural Review Committee. I didn't see that in the stack we signed, I said. It's in the binder, she answered. Page 31. You received it at closing. Right, I said. The brick disguised as a binder. Mary joined me at the doorway. Is there a problem, Cynthia? Not if your husband complies, Cynthia said. At this time, the HOA is revoking your garden permit until the committee reviews your plan. You can't revoke a city permit, I said. You don't work for the city. We don't need to, she replied. We manage this community. The association reserves the right to deny any change that disrupts visual harmony. Until we approve it, that document is effectively meaningless. I tapped the seal with my thumb. It says, approved. One decorative tree. That means something where I come from. It's not sufficient here, she said. If you proceed based on city approval alone, you'll be in violation of Section 7. Violation, how I asked. Nasty letter. Fine. Potentially a lien, she said calmly. If we're forced to escalate. Mary's fingers tightened around her mug. My jaw tightened with them. So, let me get this straight, I said. I go through the proper channel apply with the city like a normal person, get their blessing for one tree in my own yard. Then you show up on my driveway to tell me my garden permit is revoked because you don't like how it might look from the street. It's not about personal taste, she said. It's about uniformity. When one homeowner breaks from standards others follow. That's how neighborhoods slide. It's grass and a tree, not a nightclub, I said. Her sunglasses flashed the reflection of our front door. In the curved black lenses, I looked smaller than I felt. We have a duty to respond promptly, she said. And frankly, it's concerning that you contacted the city without consulting us first. I didn't know I needed your permission to plant a shadow, I said. Mary brushed my arm gently. Rhett. I took a breath and lowered my voice. Look, Cynthia, I'm not trying to make a statement. I just want to plant one tree in a bare patch of dirt the way the city says I can. The city doesn't live here, she answered. We do. I'm notifying you verbally that your tree permit is revoked pending HOA review. You'll receive a formal notice within 72 hours. Is that the same notice I asked raising the white page that already calls it unauthorized before I've bought the sapling? It's a standard template, she said. Don't overthink it. A pickup rumbled past. Hank, my next-door neighbor, slowed and leaned toward his open window. You doing all right there, Rhett? He called. We're talking about a tree, I said. Cynthia turned her head just enough. This is an association matter, Hank. He let out a breath I could hear from the porch. Just be careful, he said to me. She can slap a lien on your place. Cynthia's smile returned thin and satisfied. We can and will enforce compliance if necessary. Hank's truck rolled on taillights, blinking once as he turned the corner. I looked back at Cynthia. I'm going to read your covenants, I said. Every page. And if I don't find anything that says you get to overrule a city permit for one tree in my yard, I'm planting it. I would strongly advise against that course of action, she said. I figured you would. I answered. For a few seconds, nobody spoke. The hallway clock ticked. The little golf cart hummed softly as its motor cooled in our driveway. Expect the notice, she said finally. We keep these things documented. I like documentation, I said. It makes things clear later. She turned, walked back down the steps with quick, precise strides, and settled into the cart. The blue logo bounced once as she backed out and headed toward the clubhouse. Mary closed the door with a quiet click. She's serious, Rhett. Oh, I know, I said. I looked down at the paperwork in my hand, city approval in one, HOA threat in the other. The raised seal pressed a little circle into my thumb. It was just a garden permit for one tree, just a promise of shade in a tired yard. But standing there in the foyer between City Hall and the HOA, I had the feeling this wasn't going to stay small for long. The garage smelled like motor oil and sawdust, the kind of mix that sinks into concrete and stays there. I dropped the HOA envelope on the tool bench between the socket set and an old coffee can full of screws. Ron looked up from the mower blade he was sharpening. "That from Cynthia, again?" "Same logo," I said. "Different headache." He nodded at the bench. "Let's see it." I tore the flap and slid out 3 sheets. On top was the same preliminary review notice screaming unauthorized tree planting. Under it, a fine schedule. The last page had a small circular stamp in the corner. Copper Ridge Estates. Homeowners Association, Inc. wrapped around the seal. Tiny numbers ran along the bottom edge. I set the city permit beside it, the cream page with the raised seal that had made me feel human for 5 minutes. "Tell me if I'm crazy," I said. "City says my garden permit for one tree is approved. HOA says it's unauthorized. Who wins?" Ron wiped his hands on a red rag and leaned over the bench. The box fan pushed hot air across the garage. "You see it yet?" he asked. "See what?" He dug in his pocket for his glasses, slid them on, and lifted the HOA page. "Right here," he said, tapping the circle. "Read the bottom." I squinted. Around the curve of the seal were 3 little lines. Incorporated 2011. Renewal 2019. Status expires 12/31/2022. Status expires, I read. That just when they made the stamp, sometimes, he said. Sometimes it's when the corporate registration lapses if they don't renew. He picked up the city permit and held it next to the notice. The raised city seal looked solid. The HOA seal looked tired. "When did you close on this place?" he asked. "July last year," I said. 2023. He tapped the date again. "And this says their status expired December 31st, 2022, so they're behind on paperwork," I asked. "Could be more," he said. "State can administratively dissolve outfits that don't file their annual reports. On paper, it's like they don't exist until they fix it." The scanner on the shelf beeped awake as he hit the power button. A strip of blue light slid along the glass. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Backing up your life," he said. "Get me every HOA letter you've got." I pulled a manila folder from under the bench. HOA, MISC, was scribbled on the tab. Envelopes spilled out dues notices, reminders, warnings about trash cans and porch lights. We fed them into the scanner one at a time. The machine whirred and clicked with each sheet spitting files into the laptop Ron had propped on a paint can. After a few minutes, he spun the laptop so I could see the screen. Thumbnails of my last year in this neighborhood lined up in neat rows. "Welcome packet," he said, clicking. "Same seal. Click. Dues notice. Click. Reminder about exterior paint colors. So every official thing they've sent us," I said, "was stamped with a seal that says it expired before we even moved in." "Looks that way," he said. He clicked again. An email opened the HOA address at the top, Cynthia's name in the signature. "Here's the one they blasted to the board after your permit got approved," he said. "Listen," he read, "we cannot let this tree set a precedent. If we cave to one homeowner's city permit, we lose control. We may need to escalate enforcement to make an example." He glanced up. "That ring any bells?" "Yeah," I said. "Sounds like the speech she gave in my driveway." He scrolled down. Attachment, collection policy. Another click, and a PDF filled the screen. Midway down, a paragraph sat underlined in yellow. "Failure to comply after written notice may result in additional fines and placement of a lien against the property," he read. "Costs to pursue such lien, including legal fees, shall be borne by the homeowner." The word lean sat there like a small, sharp object. "So, that's the stick," I said. "They wave that around until people fold." "Most folks do," he said. "They see the word lean and freeze." "Can they actually do it?" I asked. "If the city already approved my garden permit for one tree, that depends," he said. "If the corporation behind this seal is still legally alive." He zoomed back in on the stamp. "Status expires 12/31/2022, blurred into thick pixels." Ron rested his hand flat on the city permit fingers, splayed palm heavy on the page. The fan clicked as it changed speed. Somewhere down the street a pickup rolled past and faded away. For a moment, the only sound in the garage was the quiet hum of the scanner cooling down. He didn't look up right away. When he did, his expression had shifted from curiosity to something closer to calculation. "Authority without paperwork is just noise," he said. "If that seal's expired—" He turned the laptop so it faced me again, his knuckles white against the edge. "She's got zero authority." The sound hit my nerves before I even saw her. "Rip!" I stepped out onto the porch, wiping sweat from my neck with the back of my hand. Noon heat sat heavy on the street. Something on my front lawn definitely had changed. Cynthia stood by the bare patch of dirt where my tree was supposed to go, one hand on her hip, the other pressing a bright red sheet of paper against the plastic tag I'd driven into the ground. "Hey," I called. "What are you doing?" She didn't look up. The tape made another quick tear as she smoothed it down over the tag. The red paper fluttered once, then stuck. From the porch, I could still see the city's raised seal under the plastic. Approved. One decorative tree. Now there was something on top of it. I walked down the steps and across the grass, each step sinking a little into the dry soil. A pickup slowed at the curb, the driver leaning his elbow on the window frame to watch. "Good afternoon, Mr. Cooper," Cynthia said without turning. Her sunglasses reflected the white of the page. "What is that?" I asked. She stepped back half an inch and folded her arms, letting me see. A single word ran across the top in block letters. Revoked. Below it, printed in neat lines, unauthorized tree installation. Remove within 7 days to avoid escalated enforcement. I read it twice, then a third time, mouth going dry. "You've got to be kidding me," I said. "The city already approved this garden permit. For one tree. You saw the paperwork. The association has reviewed your application," she said. "The tree doesn't meet our uniformity standards. That permit," she nodded at the plastic tag, "may be valid downtown. It is not valid here unless we approve it." "You can't revoke a city permit," I said. "You know that, right?" She shrugged. "We can override sloppy city approvals when they conflict with our covenants. That's what an HOA is for." The pickup rolled to a full stop at the curb. Hank leaned out the window, forearm deep tan against the paint. "What's going on, Rhett?" he called. "Apparently my tree's on death row," I said. Cynthia's jaw tightened. "This is an association matter. It doesn't concern you, Hank." "It does if you start slapping red notices on everybody's lawn," he said. Her shoulders squared. "This notice is specific to Mr. Cooper. He chose to bypass our process and go straight to the city. This is the consequence." I pulled my phone from my pocket and opened the voice recorder. The little red circle glowed back at me. "Just so we're clear," I said, tapping the screen. "You are telling me the HOA can override a city-issued garden permit because you don't like one tree. You're mischaracterizing it," she said. "The city doesn't consider sightline's canopy ratio or neighborhood aesthetic. We do. Their approval is administrative. Ours is substantive. But your seal expired last year," I said. "Every notice you've sent us has that date on it. December 31st, 2022. She didn't flinch. "The date on the stamp is irrelevant. The community recognizes us. We operate. That's what matters. The air around us went strangely quiet. Then, why does this say, remove within 7 days? I asked, tapping the paper. What happens on day 8? Her lips pressed thin. If you fail to comply, she said, we escalate. First fines, then a lien if necessary. You'd put a lien on my house over one tree, I asked. That's what it takes to maintain order? Yes. Hank let out a low whistle. You're serious? Cynthia turned slightly toward him. We can't let one homeowner undermine the standards. People talk. They point at that tree and say, if he did it, why can't we? Then this place looks like any other subdivision. We didn't buy into ordinary. They call that freedom where I grew up, Hank muttered. Cynthia ignored him. This is not about your feelings, Mr. Cooper. It's about the rule of law in this community. I stared at the red sheet. The word revoked sat exactly over the word approved beneath the plastic, like someone had taken an eraser to the city's decision and written their own. Without thinking, I pinched the top of the notice and yanked it off the tag. The tape tore loose with a sharp rip. The plastic tag flexed, then split down the middle. The city's word, approved, snapped in half, one piece still buried in the dirt. For a second, the thin breeze that had been moving through the yard just stopped. They call it order, I said quietly. I call it intimidation. She lifted her chin. Call it what you like. You have 7 days. I met her reflection in her sunglasses. And if I decide not to tear it out, her voice didn't rise. It didn't have to. Non-compliance, she said, will result in a lien. The clerk didn't even look up at first. Just the steady hum of the fluorescent light above us and the shuffle of papers moving under her fingers. Then she clicked something on her screen, leaned in, squinted, and froze. Her voice came out flat, almost clinical. Status administratively dissolved. 19 months ago. For a second, the fluorescent light flickered. Or maybe it was just my pulse kicking up behind my eyes. I swallowed. Dissolved, as in gone. She turned the monitor so I could see, as in not allowed to operate. No boards, no votes, no enforcement, no assessments, nothing. A cold line went down my back. My phone vibrated in my pocket. Ron. I thumbed the green button. You there? He asked. Yeah, I said quietly, staring at the screen. Ron, she's saying the HOA's been dissolved for 19 months. Read me the statute number, he said immediately. The clerk tapped a key and a gray box opened on her monitor. I leaned forward. State code? 14-03. Corporate status dissolved for failure to file annual report. Ron exhaled a single sharp breath. Every notice they sent you. Invalid. The fluorescent hum deepened. My hands tightened around the edge of the counter. The clerk pointed at another line. You see here, upon dissolution, the entity may not transact business. That includes enforcement actions or issuing penalties. I felt the air shift behind me as some guy waiting in line glanced up from his forms. Maybe it was the word penalties. Maybe it was the tone. I pushed the city permit forward, the same one Cynthia had smothered with the revoked tag yesterday. The ripped corner still clung to the edge of the plastic. Can I get the dissolution record, I asked. The clerk nodded. It's public. Let me pull the file. She disappeared behind a row of steel cabinets. Drawers thudded open. Papers rustled. Something metal clanged. While she searched, Ron stayed on the line. Listen, he said. This is your timeline. Count backward 19 months. Every notice they sent you since then. Not worth the ink. They had no authority to revoke anything. I knew something didn't smell right, I said. No, Ron said. Smelling wrong is when a form looks off. This is fraud adjacent. They acted like a corporation that legally didn't exist. The clerk returned and dropped a manila folder onto the counter. A single sheet slid out. Here, she said. Dissolution certificate from the Secretary of State. Stamped date. Yep, 19 months. She positioned it squarely in front of me. I could feel the weight of that county seal even before she reached for the stapler. Click. One clean punch of metal through paper. I didn't breathe for a beat. I ran my thumb along the embossed county seal. So, when Cynthia revoked my permit, this HOA legally didn't exist. Correct, the clerk said. If they issued fines, notices, liens, architectural denials, any of that, it technically has no effect. Dissolved entities can't transact business. Behind me, the next person in line whispered, Holy hell. Ron's voice tightened in my ear. Get a certified copy. That's your leverage. That's what you take into court. The clerk reached for a second sheet of paper. Do you want it filed, or just stamped filed, I said. She nodded and slipped the form into a tray. I watched her fingers move with practiced precision, aligning corners, placing the page under the heavy metal seal press. A low creak. Then a satisfying final thunk. When she lifted it, a raised circular imprint glowed under the fluorescent light. Certified copy, she said, handing it to me. Official as it gets. My fingers shook not from fear this time, but from something sharper, a kind of clarity. Ron spoke into my ear. You're holding the truth now. They can't bluff over that. I stared at the raised seal again. Prop number 2, my city tag, had been ripped apart yesterday. But this wasn't paper. This was the fuse. I slipped the certified copy into a folder and looked up. What happens if a dissolved HOA keeps issuing enforcement actions, I asked. The clerk hesitated. Depends. Some judges call it void. Others call it misconduct. But she tapped the corner of the certified form. If you're going to court, this changes everything. The fluorescent hum suddenly felt louder, sharper, like the moment before a door slams shut or opens. I thanked her, ended the call with Ron, and stepped toward the exit. Outside the glass doors, the sun hit hard, but my mind was already somewhere else, lined up on 7 days, a red, revoked tag, and a dissolved HOA pretending to run a kingdom. Some lies die the moment ink hits a county seal, and this one had just died in my hands. The envelope sat dead center on the kitchen table. Heavy paper, court seal. My name pressed into the window. Mary stood by the sink, arms folded tight. You gonna open it or stare at it till morning? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. Voicemail. Cynthia. I put it on speaker. Her voice slid through the room like something cold. You'll regret this. Mary's jaw tightened. She didn't even bother to hide it. I slipped the envelope into my hands. The weight settled into my palms like a decision already made. The fluorescent bulb above the stove buzzed, giving the kitchen a low hum. I tore the flap. Inside, a single sheet. Notice of hearing homeowner versus Copper Ridge HOA dissolved. The word dissolved hit harder in print. Something about seeing it under the court header made it real in a way the county office hadn't. Behind the paperwork, the edges of a BBQ flyer stuck out next Saturday community cookout. Bright colors, kids holding sparklers. A reminder that normal people were trying to live honest lives while our HOA played tyrant. I set the notice down and exhaled. Mary rested a hand on my shoulder. This is the right thing, Rhett. I nodded, though a part of me still felt the rattle of that red revoked tag tearing in my hand yesterday. Prop number 2, split down the middle, sat in a folder in the living room. A soft thump sounded at the doorway as Ron stepped inside, binder tucked under his arm. "You got it?" he asked. I slid the notice toward him. He read it once then, again slower fingertip following the lines. "Good," he said. "The court recognized the dissolution. That sets the stage." He dropped his binder onto the table hard enough that the papers inside fanned open. A silent beat, the kind that pulled oxygen out of the room. "Let's lay it out," Ron said. "Timeline first." I pulled a legal pad closer. Tree permit approved April 17th. HOA notice, May 10th. Second notice. "Stop," Ron said, flipping a divider tab. "Look at this." He held up a printed email. Header, plain, but the subject line sharp enough to slice, "Make an example of this tree." My stomach nodded. "Where'd that come from?" I asked. "Leaked internal message," Ron said. "Somebody on their mailing list got tired of the games." He tapped the date. "Sent after they were already dissolved." Mary shook her head. "They really thought no one would check." I drew a deep breath and pushed the city permit forward. That ripped edge, the one Cynthia had caused, caught the kitchen light. "This is what started it," I said. "One approved tree, and they used a dissolved entity to override it," Ron added, "which means your entire interaction with them for the last year and a half has been smoke." I jotted notes. "So, what's the angle?" "Fraud, misrepresentation, unauthorized enforcement. All of the above," Ron said. "But keep it simple. Judges like clean lines." He rearranged the pages into 3 piles. Pile 1, city permit. Pile 2, HOA notices. Pile 3, dissolution evidence. That's your story. I rubbed my thumb across the edge of the hearing notice. "You think we'll get anywhere?" Ron's laugh was quiet, but it had an edge. "They revoked your permit while dissolved. They threatened a lien. They issued fines they weren't allowed to issue. And this," he held up the internal email, "is intent." Mary leaned forward. "So, what now?" I felt something shift inside me, something that wasn't anger anymore. Something steadier. I pushed the binder aside, straightened the hearing notice, and said the words out loud, solid and level. "If they won't listen to the city, I'll take them to court." Ron's expression didn't change at first. Then he gave a slow nod. "That's the right line," he said. "But you're thinking too small." I frowned. "Small." He tapped the corner of the notice again, then leaned back, voice low and certain. "Keep your tree. You might seize their entire HOA property." The room went still. The BBQ flyer rustled near the edge of the table as the AC kicked on. The fluorescent bulb hummed above us. And somewhere deep in my chest, something finally aligned, a sense that justice wasn't just possible, but inevitable. Because bullies with expired seals don't survive daylight. And daylight was coming. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. No grand ceilings, no polished marble. Just 4 rows of benches, the low buzz of an old recorder light blinking red, and the faint smell of paper that had seen too many hands. A clerk stepped forward, voice carrying cleanly off the wood. "Copper Ridge, HOA. Case called." My pulse clicked once like the mic on the judge's desk, picking up a breath. Cynthia sat at the respondent's table, posture lifted, but wrong, too rigid, too expectant. Like she was waiting for an HOA meeting to start, not a hearing that could decide her authority or expose the lack of it. Her counsel, gray suit, thin glasses, leaned toward her, whispering something that made her jaw tighten. Ron nudged my elbow. "You ready?" I nodded, but my throat had the dry scrape of sand. In my folder rested everything: the ripped permit tag, the revoked notice, the certified dissolution record, and the email that had turned my stomach inside out. The door behind the bench opened. Judge Mayfield entered mid-60s glasses that didn't hide the fact he had no patience for nonsense. He sat, adjusted the microphone, and looked at the clerk. "Let's begin." A low mic click cut the air, the silent beat that tightened the room without a word. The judge turned to me first. "Mr. Cooper, you brought this action." "Yes, Your Honor. Proceed." I stepped forward, the fluorescent light overhead washing the papers in a sterile glow. "Your Honor, this began with a city-approved garden permit, 1 tree. I lifted the laminated tag, the one Cynthia had ripped. The split, approved, still showed the jagged line down the middle. This tag was placed by the city. The HOA covered it with a revoked notice. I set the red notice beside it. Ron placed the binder on the evidence table and slid the audio transcript forward. I clicked play. Cynthia's voice filled the room sharp as the tape she had used on my lawn. "The HOA overrides sloppy city approvals. Non-compliance will result in a lien." Cynthia stiffened. Her counsel stood. "Your Honor, that recording lacks context." Judge Mayfield held up a hand. "Sit. I'll decide context." The counsel lowered himself slowly. I continued. "City permit approved April 17th. First HOA notice May 10th. Second notice May 20th. I lifted the dissolution certificate. This document from the Secretary of State shows Copper Ridge HOA was administratively dissolved 19 months ago. They were not permitted to transact business-issue notices, fines, or liens. Judge Mayfield extended a hand. "Bring it here." I walked it to the bench. He ran a thumb along the embossed county seal, just like I had. His brows drew together. "You're telling me," he said slowly, "that every action taken by this HOA against you occurred after dissolution?" "Yes, Your Honor." Ron stepped forward. "And there's more." He presented the internal HOA email. Judge Mayfield read the subject line aloud. "Make an example of this tree." The gallery behind us stirred just a breath, but enough for the judge to raise his chin. The HOA counsel rose again, palms open. "Your Honor, this is being blown out of proportion. The association continued operations in good faith." "Good faith," Judge Mayfield repeated. "Your entity ceased to exist 19 months ago." He tapped the email with a blunt finger. "And this resembles targeted harassment by a dissolved entity." Cynthia shifted, finally breaking that artificial posture. She leaned toward her counsel, whispering urgently. He whispered back, his expression collapsing into something that wasn't confidence, more like math calculations with bad odds. The judge took a long breath and turned to the clerk. "Read the statutory restriction." The clerk stood. "Upon dissolution, an entity may not transact business, enforce covenants, or issue assessments, penalties, or recorded actions." Judge Mayfield faced me again. "Mr. Cooper, were you threatened with a lien?" "Yes, Your Honor," Cynthia hissed. "We never." The judge shot her a look that froze her mouth mid-word. I added, "multiple notices, all with expired seals." The judge closed the folder and sat back, hands steepled. The recorder light blinked once, twice, a red pulse keeping time with the room's silence. Then, without raising his voice, he delivered the pivot that made the air shift. "This court hereby finds that Copper Ridge HOA operated without legal authority during the period in which it issued enforcement actions against Mr. Cooper." Cynthia inhaled sharply. Judge Mayfield continued. "And because the dissolved entity continued to transact business, levy threats, and attempt to impose penalties." He reached for a second document on his bench. "This court hereby seizes all property and accounts held in the name of Copper Ridge HOA." A ripple moved through the room, quiet but unmistakable. Even Ron straightened. The judge wasn't finished. Furthermore, all HOA property including the Copper Ridge Clubhouse and associated assets is placed under the control of a court-appointed receiver pending full audit. The red recorder light blinked again faster, as if even the machine knew a line had been crossed. Cynthia rose half out of her chair. "Your Honor, this is outrageous." The judge didn't look at her. "Clipboard isn't power," he said plainly. "A court order is." He tapped the gavel once. "Next case." The mic clicked off sharp as a closing latch, and for the first time in months the air leaving my lungs felt clean. The new sign went up just after sunrise. Bold letters, black on white, drilled straight into the plywood covering the old HOA bulletin board. "Under court receivership, do not remove." The receiver stepped back, leveling the sign with a practiced eye. A small cordless drill hung from his belt, and the morning light cut clean lines across the clubhouse porch. I stood at the end of the driveway, hands in my pockets, watching. He tightened one last screw. Whir, click. Behind him, the clubhouse, once Cynthia's command post, sat strangely quiet. No folding chairs, no clipboards, no laminated violation lists taped to the door. Just silence. And 30 feet away by the sidewalk, Cynthia stood with her arms crossed tightly, sunglasses hiding nothing. The wind caught the edge of her blazer, but she didn't step closer. Just watched. Smaller than I'd ever seen her. The receiver turned toward me. "You're Mr. Cooper. That's me." He nodded once businesslike, but not unfriendly. "I'm Martin Cole, court-appointed receiver for Copper Ridge." The words landed with a weight the morning breeze couldn't move. I walked closer, boots scuffing the concrete. "So, it's official." "Oh, it's official," he said, sliding a folder from under his arm. "Judge Mayfield signed the order late yesterday. Effective immediately." He flipped the folder open, silent beat as the page turned and held it out. The top line burned like a brand. "All property accounts and enforcement authority of Copper Ridge HOA are hereby placed under receivership." I drew in a slow breath. "So, what does that mean exactly?" "It means," Cole said, tapping the page, "everything behind me, clubhouse, storage, pool equipment reserve, accounts, operating accounts, architectural files, is frozen, no board, no officers, no authority." A few neighbors had gathered by the walkway. Hank among them, arms folded, coffee mugs steaming in the cool air. Cole continued, "The court suspended every enforcement action. No fines, no penalties, no liens, no compliance threats, nothing." From the sidewalk, someone let out a low whistle. I stared at the sign. "All that because of one tree?" Cole shook his head. "No. All that because your HOA was dissolved and still acted like it ran the place. That's not a small mistake." Behind us, Cynthia shifted her weight. I caught the motion out of the corner of my eye but didn't look directly at her. Cole flipped to the second page. "The judge ruled that any action taken by the dissolved entity is void. Retroactively." I blinked. "Retroactively. Every notice," he said, "every fine, every threat." He lifted his eyes. "Including the attempt to revoke your city permit." A neighbor said, "So we're free." Cole shrugged. "Free of illegitimate enforcement, yes. A new HOA board could be elected down the line, but only after a full audit, an attorney sign-off and state reinstatement, all under court oversight." He closed the folder with a quiet snap. "That's months out," he added. "Until then, nobody tells any of you what color mulch you can buy." Soft laughter rolled through the group, thin a little, shocked but real. I looked at the clubhouse door. The bulletin board beside it used to hold lists, violations, warnings, reminders written in a tone that always felt more judgment than guidance. Now there was just that clean white sign declaring the kingdom closed. Cole motioned for me to step aside with him. "You need to hear this part directly," he said quietly. I followed. He gestured toward the walkway toward the cluster of homes lined up under the morning sun. "The court seized every piece of HOA property you see," he said. "Every rake in the maintenance closet, every dollar in their account, every authority they claimed to hold." I exhaled slowly. The weight of the dissolution record, the hearing, the fight, it all came into focus. Straight lines instead of knots. Cynthia finally spoke. "This isn't over," she said from the sidewalk. Cole turned slightly. "Ma'am, it is. Until the audit is complete, you have no authority to act as a board member or officer." Her mouth opened closed. A flash of something embarrassment crossed her face. She stepped back, heels clicking on the pavement before she turned and walked away. Not defeated, but undeniably reduced. I ran a thumb along the edge of the city permit still tucked inside my folder, the rip where she'd torn through approved, now taped cleanly. Prop number 3 healed. The sunlight hit it, catching the tape's faint seam like a scar that didn't matter anymore. Footsteps approached. Hank clapped a hand on my shoulder. "You didn't just win the tree," he said, voice low and full of something between pride and disbelief. "You took back the whole neighborhood." I looked at the sign again. The simple print, the straight lines, the way it made the clubhouse look like something modest instead of something looming. "You don't have to burn a kingdom down to take it back," I said. Cole smiled faintly. "No. Sometimes all it takes is a court order." The breeze shifted, carrying the smell of someone's early morning grill, maybe bacon, maybe hickory. Ordinary things. Good things. And for the first time since this started, the neighborhood felt like it belonged to the people who lived in it, not to the ones who tried to rule it. The new tree tag caught the morning light like a small badge of honor. Clean laminate, fresh city seal, no rips, no red stickers trying to smother it. Just approval. Simple, quiet, undisputed. I stepped out onto the porch, coffee warming my palms. The yard didn't feel like a battlefield anymore, just a yard. The kind that belonged to a normal neighborhood on a normal Saturday. But it wasn't the same neighborhood it had been a month ago, not even close. A soft breeze moved across the grass, brushing the leaves of the freshly planted tree. The sound was peaceful, something I hadn't heard here in a long time. Behind it, the old HOA bulletin board, once a warning wall, had been replaced with a wide sheet of clean cork. The new paper pinned on top read Community Council. Everyone welcome, no seals, no threats, no signatures from officers who didn't legally exist. Just an invitation. Mary stepped out beside me, tugging her sweater around her shoulders. "You're staring at that tag again," she said. "Feels different now," I said. "Like it means something more than a tree." Before she could answer, the smell of BBQ drifted across the cul-de-sac, someone firing up charcoal early, probably Hank. The same man who watched Cynthia slap a revoked notice onto my lawn. The same man who told me I'd taken back the whole neighborhood. Today, the smoke didn't smell like tension. It smelled like freedom. Ron's pickup rolled slowly to the curb. He climbed out holding a cooler. "You hosting something?" I asked. "Nope," he said. "Just figured you needed backup in case someone tried to revoke your brisket." I laughed, short, sharp, the kind that didn't carry any bitterness in it anymore. Mary waved. "Come up. Coffee's hot." Ron planted the cooler beside the porch rail and leaned on it. "How's it feel?" he asked. "Strange," I admitted. "Quiet. That's called peace," he said. "You earned it." Neighbors began drifting out. Hank the couple from Lot 12, Mrs. Green from the corner house, each holding something, a casserole dish, a coffee mug, a folding chair. It looked less like a neighborhood under receivership and more like one waking up from a long, unnecessary dream. Hank pointed at the new bulletin board. You see that? No rules, no meetings. Just people talking to each other. Mrs. Green nodded. And that receiver said we can start a new council ourselves once the audit's done. A real one. Fair one. Ron nudged me. They want you on it, by the way. I blinked. Me, Hank shrugged. You're the guy who checked the paperwork. That's more leadership than we've seen around here in years. More neighbors murmured in agreement. Mary smiled. They trust you, Rhett. I looked at the yard again. The tree. The clean tag. The sunlight slanting across the porch rail. For months, this tiny patch of ground had been a point of pressure, then conflict, then humiliation. A single place where an HOA dissolved expired and, pretending to still exist, decided to make an example out of me. Now it was just a yard. And the tree was just a tree. Except, not really, not anymore. The tree, tag, fluttered slightly, a faint tap against the stake. Prop number 3 healed. Ron caught me looking at it. Feels good, doesn't it? It does, I said. Better than I expected. He lifted his chin toward the street. Receiver told me yesterday they're filing the final notice Monday. The HOA's property stays in court hands until the audit's done. No one's getting that power back overnight. I nodded slowly. Good. A couple of kids rode past on bikes laughing. No parents yelling about property lines. No one measuring mailbox heights. Just kids being kids. Mary stepped closer and rested a hand on my back. You did the right thing, I know I said quietly, but I didn't do it alone. Ron dusted off his hands. Doesn't matter. You stood up when they expected you to fold. Most people don't. I looked out at the neighborhood porches, driveways, grill smoke, a few dogs behind fences. Everything looked ordinary again. Extraordinary, considering where we started. I took a slow breath. That little tag I said shouldn't have mattered this much. Maybe not, Hank replied. But the truth is, it did. The breeze picked up again, rustling the leaves of the new tree. I listened to the sound light steady, nothing forced. And then, because it was time, I said the words that tied every thread together. The HOA revoked my garden permit over one tree. Ron folded his arms. So you took them to court, he said. I nodded, and the judge seized their entire HOA property. The neighbors around us murmured half disbelief, half satisfaction. I kept going, the words settling like stones in their proper places. I didn't win with anger. I won with paperwork. Then I added the line that belonged here, the one this whole neighborhood needed to hear. Finally, someone fought back. The breeze moved again, softer this time, brushing the leaves as if the tree itself understood. And for the first time in a long time, the yard, my yard, sat in a peace no board could revoke.